You are now listening to You Heard. In today's episode of You Heard, we are joined by Afua Hassan, the magical midwife from the birthing place. She was actually my midwife and has created this beautiful community in the Houston area to bring together mothers and guide them through not only prenatal but postnatal care. In this episode, she goes into details to prepare mothers who are choosing to have a hospital birth in order to make sure that they are going it feeling fully informed and secure in the decisions that they are making.
Hello, Afua. Hey! I'm so happy to have you today. Thank you for wanting to be on the podcast You Heard.
Okay.
As you know, it's a platform for healing and telling stories and really giving advice to people who need it.
Right.
So I really appreciate you joining us today. So I'm going to give you the floor to introduce the topic and let's dive in.
Okay, great. So I'm Afua Hassan, and I'm Natalia's midwife, and I'm the owner of the birthing place. And today's topic is navigating your hospital birth, because only 1% of women have their baby out of the hospital.
I didn't know it was only 1%.
Yeah, only
That's
1%.
crazy.
Yeah, we haven't reached 2 yet. Mm-hmm. So when we get to 2, I'll say 2, but the 1.5, 1.25, it's not 2.
Yeah.
And so that means most women have their baby in the hospital. And I used to teach this class about how to navigate your hospital birth, but some women didn't want to pay the money, or they didn't think that it was necessary to take the class.
Yeah.
They were like, oh no, I want childbirth class, blah, blah. But going to the hospital, there's a lot of information that moms don't have. And the first thing that I would, if you're pregnant, that I would ask you to ask your physician, so when I go into labor, are you going to be there? Like, what are the chances that you're going to be there? Because if you live in a small town where there's small practices, then most of the time the doctor will be the one to catch the baby. But if you live in a place like Houston or, even New Orleans, what happens is the practices are bigger. And that means that doctors are only on call once or twice a month.
Yeah.
And if you're only on call once or twice a month, that doesn't mean that when Natalie comes in, if your doctor is not on call, then, and that surprises a lot of women. And so ask that question and then say, well, how am I going to meet those other physicians? Because if there is a way to meet them, unless there's just too big of a number, then because sometimes it's just 5 and you can meet them. It doesn't have to be a prenatal, but you can just say, oh, I want to pop in and say, oh, you might be there, because one of the things that's important for you to know is that you can only have this baby one time.
Yes.
You can have another baby. And so it's very special to you. And for me, when I talk about midwifery, I'm talking about Afua Hassan. I'm not talking about other midwives. I'm not talking about, but it's very special to me too. And I really try to do the things that the mom needs, that, like for her to have the birth that she wants.
Absolutely.
So prenatal, we talk about it a lot. We talk about what is it, what's important to you. I had a consultation the other day, and the lady was like, because she had fast deliveries and in the hospital, but her concern was the traffic, like driving over here.
Okay.
And so, because she's like 30 minutes away and there can be traffic, and I just kept saying, okay, if 4 o'clock in the morning comes and you're contracting, but you don't think it's time, I'm going to say, come on and come now. So when 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, when there's a lot of traffic, you're not in the traffic. And she was able to take a deep breath and say, okay, because no matter what we were talking about, she kept going back to, I don't want to be stuck in traffic. Have the contractions, right? And so it's like that with everybody. Like, I try to figure it out so that we can mitigate that and you could be calm. So one is to not be surprised that your doctor's not going to be there. Ask the question. Another question to ask is, throughout your pregnancy, always ask your doctor, so how am I doing? How's the baby doing? How are we doing? And And when they say, oh, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? But also to keep having them say that. So when you get to 38 weeks, 39 weeks, and they say we have to induce you, you say, but I was fine all the other weeks.
Right.
Why I have to be induced now?
Right.
You know, like, and then have them explain, because when you leave, when you allow the baby to have its own birth date, you have a better success of having a baby vaginally. You have a better success because what they do is they induce you. And what does induction mean? Induction means you sitting at home and the time comes, the doctor says, okay, at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're going to come in and we're going to start ripening your cervix with some medicine. And then we're going to give you some Pitocin to start you having contractions. And then you're going to have a baby. Then we're going to break your bag also. So they've done all these things to you and the baby's not ready to come. And what we know is that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like what happened? Did yours start at 9? I don't even remember.
So it was like the middle of the night I got up to pee, and when I got up my water broke.
Okay.
And I know that from doing the prenatals with you and the group prenatals and being with the birthing place community that I don't have to go in to the birthing place the second that my water breaks, that we're good, take some vitamin C, we're chilling.
Yeah.
And I think within maybe like a day and a half is when the contractions started getting bad, and I came in, and once I started getting worried that I was close, even though you knew I was nowhere close to having a baby, you were like, fine, come in, and you welcomed me in, and that was pretty much it. So we came in probably like midday around 4:30 for me to like start the process.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And that is because she was informed and she felt comfortable. Yes. And that is the thing that's so important, is that you feel comfortable in the process, not confused. And because in going to the hospital, one of the differences is, as opposed to having a baby with a midwife, is that you don't know who you're going to meet when you first go in.
Absolutely.
You've got to register. Even if you're pre-registered, you still got to sign some paperwork. Ask you, and you can be contracting or whatever, but there's still protocol, and these are new people. And then there's a nurse who will be taking care of you, and that's after triage. So the first thing that goes in, you get triage. You go, and sometimes you get right into a room. Sometimes you go to a pre-room where they do a vaginal exam to see where you are. If you are, in fact, in the position where they say, yeah, you can stay, then you stay, and then they call the doctor and they move you into another room. And unfortunately, nowadays, very rarely do they send moms home. If you go in, they're going to, and you're just contracting, they're going to do something to you to speed up the process. They don't. You could go in 1 centimeter contracting, and they're like, okay, well, you're here. They used to send moms home. Yeah. They don't really send them home. Most places. And that's another question to ask. That if you come in, you say to the doctor, if I'm not in active labor, can I go home? And if not, why not? If my bag is not broken, why can't I go back home? And the reason is, it's important that you know that the sooner you go in and there's nothing going on, they're going to do something to you. Yeah. And, I get calls, I want a natural birth. Well, to attain a natural birth, you need to stay out of the hospital as much as you can until you are in active labor. Right. So induction is one. Another one is augmentation. And augmentation is just what I was talking about. You come in, you're contracting, but you're not in active labor yet. And so they do the same thing. They give you something to ripen your cervix, then you get some Pitocin through an IV to stimulate more contractions, and then they'll even break your bag. Yeah. And once they break your bag, you are committed to having a baby. Right. They're not sending you home. The clock starts ticking. And that's a question to ask your physician. once my bag breaks, how long do I have
Right.
to be in active labor to have a baby? And the reason why you have to know that is because if you have another physician, like your doctor might say, okay, you get 24 hours. But if it's not your doctor who's actually there to deliver the baby, he might say you got 12 hours.
Right.
And then you will at least have some, and I hate to use the word ammunition, but I can't think. I had a long clinic day today.
Yeah.
But you'll have some facts to say, well, my doctor said. Now, some doctors don't like to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, because your doctor's, what they're going to say is your doctor's not here right now. But at least you can say, well, because you're not going to talk to the doctor. You're going to be talking to the nurse, and the nurse is going to talk to the doctor. And say, yeah, but I've read, and what does he think about that? Like, you always can counter, but because you're in the hospital setting, unfortunately, you can't be rough and tough.
Yeah.
You can't, because most times, especially if it's not your doctor, they're coming from a place of hierarchy, and you're low man on the totem pole.
Yeah.
The baby is somewhere in the middle, and that's the most important. And it doesn't matter how it gets out. Is that, the baby has to come out alive. And so they have control when they cut it out. Because the baby is live now. So if I cut it out now, I'm going to have a live baby.
Right.
And I really don't think they have too much thought process about what a unnecessary C-section does for women, because our C-section rate is way too high.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom had a C-section with both me and my sister. Now, given I'm almost 27 years old.
Right.
So I'm sure that things were different 27 years ago of why they felt they needed to triage. But they gave my mom, like, the choice of, like, do you want to have a C-section with the second one? And she, like, scheduled the day she was going to have my sister and stuff, which now, having had a child and having it with the midwife, I think that's the weirdest thing in the world.
And people do that today.
Yeah.
People do that today. Well, because a lot of times they don't have a choice. Because they're like, no, once a C-section, always a C-section, which is not true. You got to do your research. But, and women they don't even want to try. But anyway, so augmentation is when you go in and you're not in active labor. But it really doesn't matter, because very few women go into the hospital contracting and they don't get Pitocin to make it go faster.
Okay.
Because they want you in and out so that they can have the bed for the next mom. And so if you go in, more than likely you're going to have Pitocin. And Pitocin is an artificial hormone that stimulates contraction. Our bodies make oxytocin, okay, that stimulate contractions. But they're way different than what this Pitocin does. And so you're just sitting there, ha, 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 ha. Then they give you the IV, and then before you know it, you're in pain, and you're strapped to the bed. You have to have an IV. That's a question you can ask, do I have to have an IV?
They strap you.
Because you are stuck to the monitor. So the monitor, that means you're in bed on your back the whole time. You could go to your left side, you can go to your right side, but very few nurses even allow women to get on their hands and knees because they're not used to that. And so, like, trying to change position or let a mom squat in the bed. And so they're like, no, just stay there. And then what they start pushing after the Pitocin starts is you want an epidural. Because it is painful.
Yes.
And you can't walk around. You can't squat. You're just in the bed. And the thing about going into the hospital and the labor and delivery ward, very rarely do you hear birthing sounds because everybody's medicated. You don't hear women moaning. That. You don't hear them moaning. You don't hear them groaning. They're just medicated so you don't feel anything. You feel nothing. And I can remember when I was a midwifery student, I used to work at Herman Hospital in the labor and delivery ward. And they were like, oh, you're a midwifery student. And there was an African-American woman there. Her hair was wild on top of her head. And all she kept saying was, no, I don't want an epidural. She was screaming, and I worked nights. So they were like, yeah, let's go in there and see what you could do. And so I went in there. And I helped her. She didn't want an epidural. I was like, okay, come on. We can be on the side of the bed. We couldn't go far because she still had to be strapped to the monitor for the baby's heartbeat.
Yeah.
I calmed her down. She wasn't making any noise. They were amazed that I could help her through it. And there was a resident there. They said, well, since you're a midwife, you know how to deliver a baby? I was like, yeah. And she said, okay. And she let me do it because I had calmed this woman down. And she said, oh, you do know what you're doing.
Obviously.
Yeah, but they were amazed that I could make her quiet. And I let her moan, but she just needed somebody there with her.
Yeah.
She didn't have any family members. When I think about it, she didn't have any family members there. She was there all by herself. And, she looked like I looked because my hair is standing on top of my head when I'm in labor. I just look like a mad woman. And I don't like the contractions at all. So
I don't know anybody that does. I don't know anybody that does.
women who really don't have pain. Like, I had a mom with her first child. She did not know she was in labor. Her grandmother told her, you need to go, right? And even she was going to the hospital. And so even when it was time to push, they had to she couldn't feel anything. So this time, she was so afraid. She's like, I'm not going to know. I'm not going to know. It didn't happen this time.
Oh, okay.
This time, no. She felt it. She knew. The whole thing. The whole thing. I was like, yeah, this is what you missed the first time.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, because she was afraid she wouldn't know when to come. She didn't know this. No, she's like, no, it's different. I got you. And so induction is when you start from scratch and they say, I want you to deliver. And if you don't remember, ask why is it that the baby needs to come out?
Yeah.
Because there are times that your body is no longer conducive to growing a baby. One of them is when you have a disease of pregnancy called Pre-Eclampsia.
Yeah.
And Pre-Eclampsia is when your extremities start swelling, you're spilling protein in your urine, and your blood pressure is rising above normal. And what happens is, if the disease progresses, then you can start having a seizure and the baby can start having a seizure. Okay. And so your body is no longer good to grow the baby. And so if you got to be induced because of that, I totally get it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Because you can have a stroke, all these things that can happen to you. But if it's just that, there was a study that came out in 2018 that said nothing good happens for women after 39 weeks. And so they started inducing women, that was their reason. They were already doing it, but they were like, oh yeah, nothing good happens. And I'm like, but that's not true. Yeah. That's not true. And I'm not saying that some babies don't spontaneously pass or, and when I say spontaneously pass, sometimes babies do cord compression. The part of their body presses on the cord so much so that it stops the oxygen flow and the baby could just die. And when that happens, you see no visible signs. Like, even when you look at the cord, it's not discolored or whatever, that you could say, oh, this is where there was cord compression. It just happens, and that's just what we put it as. Sometimes it's a cord around the neck. And unfortunately, I had a mom who at 32 weeks, I don't feel the baby move. She came to the office, we heard the heartbeat. That was a Thursday, but by Saturday, it was nothing, and it was cord around the neck. That's tragic, but that was still at 32 weeks. And it can happen at any time. Right. But to say you have to induce everybody for the numbers that it happens. And then my position is then it should be the mom's choice.
Yes.
It should be the mom's choice.
Absolutely.
But it really isn't, because years back, it has to be 6 or 7 years now, there was a mom who, this was her second baby. She went to the doctor. She was 40 weeks, and the whole time the doctor kept saying, "You're fine, you're fine, you're fine." So 40 weeks came, and the doctor said, "Oh, you haven't delivered, so we're going to induce you." She's like, "Why?"
Yeah.
Like that didn't happen the first time. She had a different doctor in a different state. And she was like, "Oh, no." And she had her 2-year-old with her. She said, "You could die, the baby could die." And she was like, "Huh?" And her son started crying, "You're going to die, the baby's going to die." She got emotional. She's like, "I got to get out of here." So she leaves, and one of her friends said, "Well, find a midwife, find a midwife." You know, she went into labor 3 days later.
Yeah.
And I can remember meeting the husband. He said, "What we doing now?" Like, cause he was ready to go to the hospital. Like, he was like, yeah. And so 3 days later, on her own, she went into labor, had a baby, and the doctor called, "You didn't show up for your induction." She said, "I had the baby." She said, "How did you do that?" And she was like, "None of your business." But I wish But I wish she had told her. I went to a midwife, and I went into labor on my own. You know, and I don't know if she ever had that conversation with her, but that took a strong woman to, 40 weeks and to find another plan. Yeah. Most people can't do that. Right. And so that's why I have Navigate Your Hospital Birth, because, like, if you hire a doula and the doula tells you to get a birth plan, and if you're going to have a birth plan, make it be less than a page. Like, and bullets, like, because
how are you going to predict what in the world's going to happen?
It's not even that. When you give them, some people come in there with pages, and they say, "Oh, okay, thank you." The nurses say thank you, laugh and put it in the trash and say, "Oh, she going to have a C-section." Because, like, you walking into a house that sells Fords, asking for a Maserati.
I got you.
And they were like, "Okay, yeah, we're going to give you a Maserati." And then you walk out with a Ford Pinto. And you don't even know what a Ford Pinto is. It's so old. It was, my friend had one in 1970. It was a little putt-putt car. Go in there with maybe 5 bullets of things that are important to you. But already have discussed them with your doctor about, so that, but then you can say, "Well, my doctor said it was okay," because they don't do that. And if I haven't said it already, because I don't remember, but women who have successful hospital births have great nurses. Yeah. It's the nurse that does it. It's the nurse that understands natural birth. It's the nurse that wants you to have what you want to have and wants to make you as comfortable as you can be. And it's the nurse. And unfortunately, women get this wonderful nurse, and then change of shift happens. And when change is like, that's the other thing that you have to be prepared for is change of shift, because it happens. Like, and then you get somebody totally different. Yep. I mean, I had a client who, unfortunately, with her second baby, when that happened, she was so disappointed. Her blood pressure went up to the point where she ended up with a C-section, because she was so mad at this second nurse who wasn't listening to her.
And I think that's, having been through the experience, that's the only thing you want, is for someone to understand and to listen to you. And if you're going to be in an environment that isn't going to allow that, then you're going to have a stressful birth, and it's going to create complications that you didn't want there in the first place. I think for me, it's, I trusted the process so much, and I trusted you so much, and I knew you were going to be there. I didn't got to worry about changes, shit. I'm going to be on vacation. I'm not going to be here with this, that, and the third. Correct. So I knew at the most foundational, rawest, purest point, I knew what I was getting. Right. And that sense of security was enough for me to, as painful as the whole labor was, I look back and as long as it was, there wasn't a moment that I regret. There wasn't a feeling that I won't have all over again, because
Right.
it was so... It was ours, and we owned it, and I didn't have to worry about anything.
Right, because like I'm going on vacation in October, the end of end of October.
Finally,
yeah, for real, because I'm marrying a client in Cancun.
Ooh, okay.
Right, and so I'm telling people now, like I'm not taking people after the 15th because women can deliver, and so, but doctors don't say that because they have backup.
Right.
You know, like, and it really doesn't matter because they're on call only so many times anyway. So it's not like they are locked into, you know, being there. So no, it is, that is important. The other thing is that when you are pregnant, every time you go to your prenatals, have questions for your physician. Like if you have to read a book, or like, I'm sure if you go online and say, what questions should I ask my obstetrician? I'm sure there's a list somewhere.
Yeah.
They have to know how important this is to you.
Right.
They do it every day, all day long.
It's second nature.
It is second nature. But like for me, because one, I don't have their volume. And two, my perspective is so totally different, because it's not just get the baby out. It's like, okay, mothering and your partnershiping and, you know, you yourself, like taking care of yourself, making sure and preserving your relationship. Because your kids grow up and, oh my God, you're thinking, who are these people that I spent all my energy on? And I know moms who are very, very disappointed because it's like none of the teaching that they did stuck anywhere.
Right.
And if you know, so if you are in a good relationship, preserve it, because when they go, at least you'll have somebody.
Right.
And if you're not in a relationship, preserve yourself.
Absolutely.
You know, preserve yourself, because I'm so fortunate that I'm in a good space with myself that I, you know, y'all could go by. See ya.
Yeah, my mom's figuring that out now. I recorded an episode with her yesterday. My sister's going to college in August, and she's like, now what? Like, who? I don't know who I am when I'm not having to be a mom 24/7, and she doesn't have a partner or anything. So it's that question of like,
and you got to plan for that. Like, and if you plan for it, when it comes, it's not that hard.
That's what I told her.
Everybody is different in terms of, because I'm like, okay, you could go, it's fine. But some parents are like, oh no, stay. I want you to be here. You know, and so, but when they actually leave the nest, you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs. And what do I, like you said, what do I do? And so if you think about that as you're parenting, because it goes by quickly. Like, I know your daughter's just a year. Is she a year and a half yet, or just a year?
No, just a year. But the year went by quick.
The year went by and so will 20 years. 20 more years is going to go. You know, like, because you get so caught up in doing the stuff and having fun, and then before you know it, it's over. And for me, it was like, okay, bye. Like, I was okay with it, but because I had so much fun with them as they were growing up, that, you know, as they move on to their life, it's great. Asking the doctor questions each and every time, and then when the doctor says something as simple as, most physicians by 36 weeks, they're doing vaginal exams, and ask them, what are you looking for? Like, whatever they do, ask them why. And then what happens if we don't do it? Like, you don't have to just straight up say, I don't want it done. But say, well, what happened if we don't do it? And the reason why I say that is because I just delivered a physician, obstetrician, in October. You know, at 36 weeks, they start doing well, you don't know because you didn't have it.
No, I'm shaking my head.
And so at 36 weeks, they started doing vaginal exams. First time moms, it doesn't even matter. And so, but the deal is that what are you doing with that information? Because at 36 weeks, Your cervix is supposed to be closed. Mm-hmm. If you've had a baby already, you could be 1, 2, you could be 3 centimeters dilated. Mm-hmm. Okay. But it's the contractions that change the cervix even more. And so there's really no reason to go in there, unless you've had these booming contractions and you're saying, oh, I feel so heavy and it's hurting and I'm still contracting and blah, blah, blah. So I asked her, I said, so why do you do vaginal exam? She said, well, to see what the cervix is doing. I said, okay, well, what is it doing? She said, it's closed. I said, so what you going in there for? I said, especially for first-time moms. I said, what you going in there for? She said, I don't know. That's my training. So she wasn't even thinking. And I said, but do you know what your colleagues are doing? She said, what? I said, they're saying, oh, your cervix is closed. You're probably going to have a C-section. At 36 weeks.
That's crazy.
37 weeks. Oh, it's still closed, long and thick. You're probably going to have a C-section. Now, all of that is the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Because I have moms who are 40 plus weeks come in talking about they're contracting and their cervix is long, thick, and closed. Mm-hmm. And I say, go home. So if at 40 weeks and something, the cervix is closed, at 36 weeks, it was closed too. Because it doesn't open up and then close back. Right? It doesn't. Right. That doesn't happen. And so those kind of questions, if you're early pregnant and the doctor is saying, oh, we got to do another ultrasound. Why? Like the first one was fine. We saw the baby's heartbeat. Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to see that it's growing. Well, between 6 weeks and 12 weeks, if it's not growing, there's nothing that they can do about it. Right. So there's not a pill you could take. Yeah. There's not so it's something they could charge for. Mm-hmm. Right. But then you can still say, well, what happens if we don't do it?
Mm-hmm. I think that's such a good question. Like, what are we losing if we don't do this?
Yeah. Because then it's not even aggressive on them. Mm-hmm. It makes them think. Right. It makes them think because they just gonna say what we're doing this. Then you're feeling them out also about how aggressive they're gonna be with you. Yeah. When you are not doing what they want, they see you as non-compliant. Mm-hmm. And when you are non-compliant, then you're a problem. And if you're a problem, they smile, and then it's like, oh, I'm just gonna section her anyway. Mm-hmm. And what you want is a good relationship with your health, as good as it can get. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that families forget all the time is that you're employing them. Yeah. They don't get that. Mm-hmm. Like doctors are like, they don't see it as you're employing them. They're like, oh no, they're giving you a service. But it's not for free though. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's not for free. Mm-hmm. And but they don't, that part doesn't figure into it for them. Yes. But it needs to figure into it because a lot of women get very intimidated by physicians because they'll even say, how many years did you go to medical school? And the deal is that, but this is my body. I know my body more than you. Absolutely. And I also want women to question, why do you go to men obstetricians? Yeah. Because they do it all the time. But why do you go to, I'm sure that there are female urologists. But there are not as many female urologists as there are male obstetricians.
And GYNs.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure. And they don't have the body parts. They don't have the hormones. But, ain't no man ever stuck his finger up my vagina unless it was for pleasure. Mm-hmm. I get it. Yep. That's a question. Now, that doesn't mean that all women obstetricians and gynecologists are these wonderful, because they were trained by men. Yeah. So
it's a male practice from the beginning.
It is. But some women can bring out their femininity and their sensitivities, and at least they have the body parts and the hormones, and you tell them, oh, my vagina is something they can identify.
But I think even with that, I learned more about my body being pregnant than before. Like things in regards to my vagina and cervix and uterus and just things that my body could do in general as being born a female.
Okay.
That I had no clue until I met you and I got pregnant. You explained things and I was like, oh, okay. And I was telling my mom about it. I'm like, did you know my body's doing this? That's why I'm not stressed about this. And it's like, you know, even for people who are trained and in medicine, I don't think they're even having those conversations because obviously generations before us weren't teaching us in the first place. They didn't know it existed.
Correct. Yeah. So the biggest thing about navigating your hospital birth is ask questions.
Yeah.
And then the other part is, and if we don't do that, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
You know? But you have to know what's coming. And when a doctor tells you, like, if you're 15 weeks and you start talking about labor and delivery, and they say, oh, well, we'll talk about that later. I say, no, I really would like to talk about it now. Because what happens is when you talk about it later and you find out whatever their real perspective is, you might not like it, but very few women are going to leave. At that stage, at 15 weeks, you could leave. Right. But also know that when you leave and go someplace else, that new physician is going to say, you're the problem, not the obstetrician. Like, and that's unfortunate. And so, if you want to leave, the earlier you leave, the better, because some doctors won't take you. It doesn't even matter if you've had prenatal care. Some doctors would, like, what you coming so late for? Because they see you as a problem.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you didn't like what they did? Well, hell, I might be doing the same thing. Like, you know? So that's why it's real important that you ask questions. And like I said, I'm sure somewhere online, what question should I ask an obstetrician? And so you should have that list. And your obstetrician should be able to answer at least 3 of your questions every time. Because sometimes they'll tell you, okay, I'll answer one now and the next time. And they don't see you as often as I saw you, like every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They see you once a month. It is important that you ask questions and know the process. Because unfortunately, I wish the hospital was a place for women to have a baby. To have, like, and they lie on television. Like, you're not a television watcher. I watch television, like, all day, all night. And, all the hospitals now have these commercials. Oh, we're so friendly and we're so nice and we answer your phone calls and I'm like, why are you lying? Like, why are you, you know, because it's not true at all. And so it's important that you research and know what the system is, because they want you in and out and next.
Yes.
That's it. And it's like an assembly line and they don't know you. So like after you have the baby, they're going to shoot you with Pitocin. I only give Pitocin to women who are excessively bleeding because I feel their uterus. If it's hard already, that's good. If they're breastfeeding, then I know your uterus is going to be contracting and I check it, but it's not, okay, you got to have this and you got to have that. Everybody gets it.
Right.
There's no individualized care. And I'm not trying, for all of you that are going to the hospital, that's where you want to be. That's where I want you to be. Like,
what makes you happy?
Yeah, no. I don't want anybody out of the hospital who wants to be in the hospital. Please don't come. And so, but I want you to have the birth that you want to have. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you at least have a partnership with your physician.
Yeah.
Even if he or she is not going to be there. Once you get in there, you're meeting all these new people. When you're...
Right. When you're in pain.
So your partner has to be your advocate. You can hire a doula. So you have to be your own advocate. But I want to thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for giving me the time. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the advice that you gave today. And hopefully we could do it again.
Yeah, we can. Another topic. So if all the audience, if there's a topic that you want to hear from Afua Hassan, you just DM my girl here, Natalia, and we'll make it happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
You are now listening to You Heard.